everyone relax. This is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson. Hello, and thank you for watching.
That was the most slow and deliberate visual call signs you've given me so far.
So I did the little action that I do at the start.
Which
Top
you can
Gun
see
style.
on our Patreon.
Exactly. Oh, thank you, by the way, to everyone who's been signing up to the Patreon.
Yeah.
So obviously we had a promotional month.
Yeah. Beyond 2000.
Beyond 2000. Which, look, we speculated at the time we should call towards 2000.
Which is more, which I think is where it ended up, towards.
But I think that the great thing about towards 2000 and the victories that we're going to announce in our towards 2000 is that we've still got beyond 2000 up our sleeve for next time.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it has been like, we had close to 300 new people sign up. And not only that, the people who were existing members up their membership. So it's actually been exactly what we needed. It's the shot in the arm to keep the lights on.
And please keep going. It is not too late to sign up. All the great content that obviously we've been promoting for the last month is still there, and we are going to record a whole bunch of new stuff as well. There'll be stuff that goes up over, the next couple of months, some fresh content there as well.
We've been banking some bonus episodes, which will be released over the next few months, and more to come. So thank you to everyone who supported us. But yes, we're back in the studio. We had a 6-week break since we've seen each other.
So yesterday we did the live show at the Basement Comedy Club. We've got one more of those to go. December the 21st, which is my last work commitment for the year. Well, actually, we're going to record the next day, aren't we? So the next day is my last work commitment.
But it's a bit like the Friday before a long weekend, right? Like, it'll be your second to last work commitment. So you can start letting your hair down a little bit.
I consider that to be the celebration weekend.
Yeah.
The live show on the 21st, I've had an incredibly busy year, and the live show on the 21st, and then the day of us just fucking around and recording. Because,
who knows what'll happen that day?
Because the other thing is, we've only got, the episode we're recording right now, and then the next episode we'll record today, we'll see out the year of TOFOP shows. That will be the end of the shows. That means that today we'll record another couple of episodes that are beyond 2000. And what I mean is beyond 2024, and they'll be in 2025.
Yeah.
So to me, you're playing with the casino's money at that point.
Yeah.
We're so far into our speculative future that all bets are off, because who knows what would have happened in those months.
Well, we like to make, when we do these bulk records, sometimes we like to make predictions about what's going to happen in the future, like what celebrities are going to die and that kind of stuff. So we could have a punt.
Well, you know what we should do? Maybe
how the test series is going to finish up. I've got a feeling I know what the answer to that's going to be.
Well, that's the great thing, because there are so many things that are in play right now that in the months that will pass in that time, I mean, because the whole inauguration is going to happen.
Oh, that's right, of course.
While we're off. So, in a world sense, we're on the brink of World War III at the moment. The inauguration hasn't happened yet.
Imagine if there was a left-leaning January 6th, just a bunch of blue-haired people storming the Capitol to complain that there isn't more diversity in the choices of dairy you can get from your cafe.
Well, Jimmy Pardo's been suggesting on Never Not Funny that they storm the Capitol on January 6th and install more windows.
What is that, the opposite? So rather than break them?
They broke windows.
They give
an extra
give
layer
cops flowers.
of windows. So I think that's fun. So we've got 4 episodes to record today. Why don't we make episode 3, which will be the first one for next year, a predictions episode?
Yeah, the crystal ball.
Yeah, we'll do a
episode.
We'll
Not crystal ball from Breaking Points, but a crystal ball episode.
Yeah, we can, into the new year, we can have a crystal ball. So there's going to be heaps of great content. Thank you to everybody who signed up to the Patreon, who got behind it. And yes, so we do these live shows. The way we've been doing it this year, it's our new little method, is because I've been mostly based in Melbourne. You've been flying down to Melbourne. We will do a live show on the Saturday, and then on the Sunday we'll do a bulk record. And it's been a really lovely way, a model to do the show. We might not do it the exact same way next year, but this sort of model of doing a live show somewhere and then bulk recording the next day.
Yeah.
It's given the podcast a new energy and a new rhythm, I think.
Yeah, I think that's the secret to how the show's been going so long, is we keep sort of changing up our exposure. It's like exposure therapy. Sometimes we need a break.
We keep trying new things.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. We're that couple.
Yeah, we had a break.
Experimenting.
We saw other people. We introduced other people into the relationship, and we're both cool with it.
Well, I did.
Will can have his serious conversations on philosophy. Occasionally, I'm going to just bang on about video stores with my mate. And it's fine. It's all in the same field. It's out in the open. We're not podcasting behind anyone's back.
It was a bit of a throwback, the live show yesterday as well, because like I for the first time in a long time, I went out and got really wasted with some friends. And I mean, potentially jeopardized the quality of the live show because it was one of those things where it wasn't a planned, it was a very spontaneous, hey, I've got some friends in town. We went up for drinks, we kicked on. And then I woke up at like 8 a.m. with the worst fucking hangover and like that kind of anxiety where you're like, oh my God, like, do I have to do stuff today? And I had a nap and I managed to kind of pull myself together, but then Dave Thornton turned up as one of our guests, and as soon as he walked down the stairs, I recognized a fellow day walker. Like his hair was slightly askew. He had that kind of light sheen of someone who was sweating alcohol. And I was like, "Were you out last night?" He's like, "Yeah, I can't do it anymore." I don't know. And I was like, "Oh, thank God, this will be easy." And it reminded me of the early days of TOFOP.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, because I mean, I'm rarely drinking these days. I don't say that I don't drink at all because I have had the occasional drink, but very, very rarely now. And, half a dozen a year sort of vibes. But Friday night was one of those half a dozen times. I only had one cocktail. I'd finished up doing the radio show I'd been doing for 6 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was
such a good show.
And it was so fun to do something that had an end date. I mean that in the genuinely the nicest possible way. I was talking to a few people about it, which was just this idea that anything that might have bothered you if it was a long-term working circumstance, you just didn't. It was just so easy to let it go by and just say it doesn't really matter. Like this is like let's keep this fun and fresh and not get bothered by the small stuff and just concentrate on the general vibe. At the start of it, I said to Daisy, because I'd never worked with him before. Like I'd worked with Rosie before, which literally when Jay rang me to say, hey, can you come and do this fill-in thing? He said, Rosie's going to do it. And I said, yeah, I'll come and do it. That was I just wanted to work with Rosie again. I loved working with her so much. And she's remained a good friend of mine. And then he said, I'm going to chuck you in with Daisy Thomas, the footballer. And I'd only ever met Daisy once.
Yeah. So he said, no eye contact.
Yeah.
He addresses me as sir.
Yeah, sir. Oh, well, it's funny you say that because he was so respectful.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was... I don't want to overly psychoanalyze, but his dad wasn't around a lot when he was young, and I won't go into any more of his personal details other than what he shared publicly. But him and Mick Malthouse have a really strong relationship and a strong bond that you read about a lot, and you can see how that might be because he's actually very respectful of older people, in a fun way, not in a But he literally for the 6 months we worked together, every morning when I was in the Melbourne studio, he made me a cup of coffee.
Oh, really?
Yeah, every morning.
I've never made you a cup of coffee once, I don't think.
Once.
I don't call you sir.
He would always be there a couple of minutes before me, enough time to make a cup of coffee, and literally as I'd walk in, he would have made me a cup of coffee. He's a very nice, lovely, polite young man, and
listen to you.
I know, right? He made you feel like that, though. You're like, oh my God, am I a
upstanding
role model?
young man. Yeah.
And I would recommend him for a position at your company or any company.
To whom it may concern.
Yes.
I have known Daisy Thomas.
Yeah, Daisy Thomas. But yeah, there was something really glorious, and it probably gives you an insight into how you should approach, because all things do have an expiry date.
Yeah.
But there's something about knowing that something has an expiry date and being comfortable with that. It was always, I couldn't have done it further. I had other things.
Well, it's like a holiday romance, right? Have you ever had a holiday, a summer romance?
That's exactly what it feels like.
We can just
everything's
make
perfect.
Yeah.
That thing you do with your teeth that will annoy me if we were dating.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it because I'm going home in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. It was, and I've never really had an opportunity to do something like that before. You have a version of it, right? Which is, when you do a short job, you'd understand. You do a film or whatever, you bond with the people who are part of the cast, you all become friends, you work together. But that normally is something kind of less than a month or two, or it's your home and away blue heelers, long term, this is my work job, I'm here every day for the next. This one was the perfect amount of time in between. And the great thing was, it wasn't meant to be that amount of time. So
Yeah,
it got
no pressure.
it was meant to be 3 months. That went well. So it was like, hey, why don't you have a break and then we'll come back and we'll just have another. It was like we had the summer fling.
Yeah.
And then there was one more, hey, we're coming back in town for a couple other weeks. Would you want to hang out again?
Yeah.
Then we hung out again. And then it's like, okay, this is, all right, it's over. We've got to go back to our lives. But this was fun.
Yeah, it's kind of like you know, like Led Zeppelin. They don't do reunions, or they haven't done a reunion. It's like, well, they had this kind of run,
Yeah.
and it's legendary now, and they're considered one of the like seminal bands. Like, why jeopardize that? Like, it was perfect. You don't need to do a second series or bring out another album. Just let it be what it is. Like, you guys were all okay with it being what it is, and the temptation would be like, hey, like let's sign a 3-year contract or do longer or whatever. But this is, if you can be disciplined, or you can always come back, I guess, in a shorter form and do another 6 months somewhere down the line or whatever. But
I was saying this to our friend Justin Hamilton, that because I'm at a stage in my career where I'm not looking to do more big media jobs. So what I'd really like to do is transition towards, I've talked about it for years, but just like mostly being a full-time stand-up. Like, the ideal world is I do this and I do my stand-up and, then you just dabble in some other things, but no sort of full-time commitment. This is what I have to do all the year. This is the thing that is my responsibility to do, the producing or the publicity, just the fun bits of it without any of the sort of day-to-day. I've been working in the day-to-day of that for 25 years now, and I just would like my career and life to go in a bit of a different direction. But if I could be a professional comedy consultant,
right.
Like if I were the guy that is happy to come in for the 3 months that you need someone to, so-and-so's gone down, something's gone out.
Oh, right.
Like someone's got maternity leave, but with no obligation. Because like often when you put someone into that, then they're upset that the show doesn't continue or whatever it might be. I'm the no strings guy.
That's actually a good
I would
position
love to be
in.
the no strings guy.
I mean, but that's got to be an attractive proposition for a potential employer too, because they're like, oh, we've got this guy who can come in, can right the ship, can give us 3 months of quality, and we don't have to sign him for three years and have that stress of ratings or whatever.
And maybe I'm wrong. I might be wrong about this, but I think that I'm pretty good adapting to whatever circumstance I'm in. So I often do like a big day of press for like Gruen or for Question Everything. Please watch Question Everything on ABC iView, by the way. We've got to get our iView numbers up. But if I'm doing a whole day of press talking to different radio stations, I always feel like I have a good chameleonic,
whatever the
able to,
tone of the
if
station.
I'm on 3AW, I can do good 3AW stuff.
What I hate about immigrants is this.
And then I'm on
the
SBS.
woke agenda.
Like, what I love about immigrants is this. It's a balanced day. I can play all sides if they'll buy a ticket. So, no, I think that I could be like a good, in case of emergency, break glass.
The Swiss Army knife of media jobs.
And I'd love to go into some of those environments on a short-term basis. Like I'd love 1 month of like being at a station that played, pop music and Charlie XCX and me having to talk about all those sort of, not like I couldn't do that for a year or like 5 years.
That job exists though, isn't like when I was at 7, I knew there was always like those hosts, like a Larry Emder or someone who has a network contract. And it's like, so he'll get paid for hosting Wheel of Fortune or whatever, but then he's like their utility player where it's like, oh, we need someone to fill in on the Today Show. And so he'll do 2 weeks there. Oh, we've got this new experimental thing we're doing, and they'll just throw him in there. So that job does kind of exist, but I guess you are on
normally
contract.
Normally it's somebody who's on the network contract, someone they're developing for another job. They put so-and-so into Weekend Sunrise, and then that person does Weekend Sunrise for long enough, they suddenly go, well, I want to do Sunrise. I want to be the main person. I don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to be the main person.
Larry wants to be the main person. Like every time I speak to him, he seems quite content just flitting about between job.
I know, but Larry does have, like Larry had the morning show for so long, but now he's got the Chase, which is huge, and he won the Gold Logie, and it's like,
Did he?
Didn't you know that Larry won the Gold Logie?
I don't keep track of Logies.
Of the two of us to be updated.
I know. I really was surprised. You're the guy who tried to take Logies down.
It did happen while we were
He won the Gold Logie.
while we were on air.
This year.
on
This-
the radio.
Yeah, right. Good. Well done, Larry.
Larry won it this year. Yeah, well deserved. Like huge career in Australian show business. And
Yeah.
I, like you, think that award is ridiculous. But if you are going to give out that ridiculous award, then I think Larry Emder
pretty
is the sort of
deserving.
person of like, he's done a great job in the Australian television industry.
I remember sitting on a flight with him to do the telethon in Perth. He was in business. I was not. And as we were chatting on the plane, he was flicking through like a guide, you get those used car magazines or whatever, but it was for yachts. He was looking at yachts.
Used yachts magazines.
And I'm like, I guess you're doing okay. I think like 30 years at Channel 7's probably served you well.
He made, I believe he made some shrewd property investing like decisions as well and stuff, I think.
Yeah.
Smart people. So I would like to be not that person. So if you put in like Shervo to weekend, sunrise, Shervo then wants to do sunrise. However, I'm the guy where you've just put a Shervo into sunrise.
Yeah.
So what you don't want, what is a nightmare scenario, is someone coming into weekend sunrise and wanting the next job,
prize.
right? Right. Because then there's like in-network competition, etc. Or you just want to put someone in. Maybe you've got the person in place who is the next person, but they're nervous about they need to have maternity leave, paternity leave, and they need to but for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, they need someone to come in who knows. Don't you be eyeing office space. Don't you be thinking, oh, this is a pretty good job. I wouldn't mind doing this. Just come in, do the job, leave again.
I guess the concern for the producers is, will this person, because the motivation to do a good job on weekend is, I could potentially get the full-time gig. So the concern for the producers would be, Will be bringing his A game if he actually doesn't want the main gig?
But I want the gig to...
But you want the...
I want the
short-term
gig of being the short-term guy.
Yeah.
So I have to do a good job in each...
Part-time lover. That's you.
That's me.
Yeah.
I want to be
an easy lover. He'll take your show and you won't feel it.
Right?
Yeah.
I just slip in, slip out.
Yeah, I like it.
Like, kind of...
He's just a gigolo and everywhere he goes.
Kind of the littlest hobo of, entertainment. I just go from show to show.
Highway to heaven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hop in and just, be part of the show for a while and then just move on.
Yeah.
And we don't look back. We don't have to have, reunions or, it's just, it happened.
There used to be, this is going to seem so archaic, but when Jump the Shark was a relevant term.
Yeah.
For those of, I don't know if we even know we have young listeners. When the last time we did a survey?
We do have some.
But Jump the
young
Shark,
listeners.
referring to Happy Days, when that show went downhill is when Fonzie jumped the shark in his leather jacket on water skis. And, that has since become part of the vernacular for when a show crosses the line. Their example in Jump the Shark, the golden rule they had was there was this actor called Ted McGinley who was in Happy Days. He was on Married with Children. He was like this kind of staple of 80s and early 90s television. And the Jump the Shark people said that was the death knell. You knew as soon as your show hired Ted McGinley. So when he joined Happy Days, that was when it went downhill. When he joined Married with Children, was when it went downhill. You're kind of the opposite of Ted McGinley because you are that jobber, that guy who comes in and fills a need.
Yeah.
But you're not signaling the death of the show.
No.
You are the guy to just prop it up for that kind of short-term period until they bring in Ashton Kutcher to replace Charlie Sheen.
Just get it ready for what's next.
Yeah, you keep the bed warm. You're the fluffer.
I'm the fluffer. I'm the comedy fluffer.
Yeah, that's right. You keep it hard until someone can come in and finish the job.
And then I go, there you go. Tag in. I'm off.
I kept the jokes in the air. I kept it going.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
The comedy fluffer.
So anyway, it was the final day of that, and I've still got a bunch of shit to do this year. So I thought, a friend and I went to dinner. It was very lovely, and I thought, you know what? I'll have a cocktail.
What did you have?
So it was just, this is this restaurant, it's a vegan restaurant, but it's like a vegan fine dining restaurant. It's so good. It's they do this mushroom steak thing that is
Okay.
Anyway, it does my head in. It's
Right.
so good. And
Are you vegan? No. Yeah.
vegetarian, but anyway. So
Can pretend to be vegan.
they had fancy cocktails, just there.
Vegan
there was some sort
cocktails.
of berry, I assume so. I assume
I mean, is there any
probably
meat
was.
in cocktails?
I mean, but I
Or
guess some
dairy?
alcoholics might have like,
Cream or something.
yeah, or they might have like insects. I don't know how
What?
to do insects. Like, the food, the colouring and
Does it
stuff.
come from bugs?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Well, I mean, I'm speculating.
Why?
I don't know. mate. I don't know why.
What bugs what colours come from bugs?
Red?
Come from
Doesn't
squids?
red come from
What bug?
bugs?
Where did you hear this?
I don't know.
Mike, while we talk, can you
I reckon
Google
red food dye comes from, or is it like,
crushed bugs?
or is it like beavers' anuses?
What
Have
are
we
you
spoken
talking about?
this before?
No.
Does red food dye come from beavers' anuses? Have I had a stroke?
I think so. I would assume it would just come from like clay or something like that. You could get red or ochre. Is that the right word? From clay.
I believe that there are food colorings
That are derived from
that are derived from bugs, and there are
organic.
some that come from like beavers' anal glands.
I mean, having
or-
said that, I've never considered where food dye comes from. But I just would have assumed in this day and age of chemistry that you could create it in a laboratory. You wouldn't have to take an animal and crush it.
Yeah, I know, right? Like you can imagine, just
Like you just
there's
mix.
there's this professor down there. He's been.
Well, we've got the Hadron Collider. I assume that
There's
they're
someone down
smashing
there
those
going,
atoms.
We've got to do
just to make
something.
red
What
food
are
dye.
we doing? We cannot.
We've got
keep
all these
going.
hundreds and thousands that are
We've got
white.
all these beavers with their anuses on full display. There's got to be a better way.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, have you got an answer on that? Where does food dye come from?
The cochineal bug produces a red dye.
Holy
used
shit!
To create a variety of characters: scarlet, crimson, orange, burgundy.
What is
Carmine,
the
Carmine dye?
So what bug is it? The cocker spaniel.
The cochineal.
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 Cochineal bug.
What,
Let's
I have
have a
no
look
idea
at
what a
it.
cochineal looks like. Is it a
It's
beetle?
Like some sort of a beetle, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
The poor
cochineal
fucking
beetle.
cochineal.
Now, did you Google beavers' anuses and red food dye? Because I think there's something that is actually, I'd like to know what it is that I am being reminded of.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's something in this.
Okay, good.
Castrium
Yeah.
is a natural flavoring that comes
Oh, it's
Sounds
flavouring.
like
anal
something
sacs
Adam
of-
Castrium.
Hang on. Sorry,
the
tell
anal
me.
sacs of beavers.
Yes!
Sometimes used in food.
What the fuck?
Yes!
So hang on.
Ice cream, chewing gum, pudding, and brownie.
Yes!
No
Beaver's
way.
anus. Yeah.
I had chewing gum after the gig last night.
yeah, you-
I was chewing a beaver's
You
anus.
were just chowing down a beaver's anus.
So hang on, but the thing that I always wonder when this stuff like this comes up is who was the first person to
Who
get
just licked
like,
a beaver's
extracted a
anus and
beaver's
went,
anus?
"This
Goes,
is
could be good for gum,
delicious." This is-
and now we have chewing gum.
It's just been, I'm trying to give up smoking and I've been really licking some beaver's anus.
Okay, but we're talking about two different things, right? So the the cocker spaniel bug
The cochineal.
makes dye, and
Cochineal
the
bug is-
beaver's anus makes sort of like gelatin type for chewing gum and stuff.
I think
is that right?
yeah, but they're both in lollies, I guess is where my crossover must have happened because they're both ingredients that are used in lollies.
So I guess if you are like an animal rights activist, that would be part of, hey, we shouldn't be crushing the cochineal and making dye. But is there like a specific group that's like, how certain like orangutans, like palm oil, or, you're killing the orangutans. Do you think that there is a specific group that'll like protect cochineal? What are they? I keep forgetting the name.
Cochineal.
Cochineal bugs. Like, leave
Yeah.
the cochineals alone.
Sounds like a 70s footballer. Cochineal.
Joey Cochineal.
Joey Cochineal.
Played barefoot, mate, in the Northern Territory. He was drafted at 26. Yeah, I mean, do you think that there's a specific group of people like this is the silent, there's a silent slaughter of the cochineal bug? We need
Yeah,
to...
there is. I mean, how other did it get on my radar?
How did it get on your radar?
Yeah, I think because people say you shouldn't eat those things because you can't
no,
have this
like
because
party-
of gelatin in cows.
Party mix, so like
Yeah,
the natural...
because there's gelatin in that as stuff as well, so that you're already
I always thought it was horse's hoof
yeah
that you got gelatin from.
Well, a horse is an animal.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't realize it was baboon's anus or what is beaver's
No,
anus.
gelatin is not beaver's anus. Gelatin is horse's hoof, but that's also in
Okay,
there. Is what
but
I'm
chewing gum is beaver's
saying.
anus.
Yeah, beaver's anus.
Ooh,
But
fucking hell, man.
yeah, so this is interesting because the other day on the radio,
Hmm.
we were talking about if you could only eat. Oh, this is a good question to ask you as
Okay.
well. If you could only eat potatoes served one way for the rest of your life,
Oh, good question.
What way? So this is not what's your favorite type of potato.
Yeah.
It's
The serving. So
this
is
the
it fries or mash or
yeah, the only way you can have it.
chips?
Chips.
I think
Hot chips
hot
or
chips.
potato chips.
Hot chips. No, not hot chips. Hot chips. I like good.
You don't think that
crispy-
hot chips would get too samey if it was the only way you could eat potato?
Well, I think about what I eat most often, and I'd say that on the rotating weekly menu for the family at home when I cook, chips is the most common. I have chips every week. So far
Yeah.
on current practice, chips are the most common form of potato that I consume, and I haven't got sick of it yet.
Yeah, I ended up settling on potato chips, even though I wouldn't say
Not
them.
fries. I think fries I'd get a bit sick of,
Oh, interesting.
but chips. I like a thick,
But not
crispy chip.
wedges.
I hate
'Cause you-
wedges.
yeah,
I fucking
exactly.
hate it's a potato.
Yeah,
It's too much.
yeah. So
I think
Uh,
chip is a perfect balance of crispy salt with enough kind of flesh. Fries is a bit too oily and salty. Chips like a potato, like crispy chip is way too much. Get really too oily, and then the wedge is never got on the wedge train.
I like a crispier chip, but if it were the only way I was going to eat them for the rest of my life, you can't live that crispy
No,
lifestyle. You've
one
gotta-
pack of crispy chips, I think
Yeah.
you get done right. Like,
So-
don't you get dehydrated and
So I said potato chips just because I think that over a lifetime there's just more options, variety, and I think that is the one that I probably
and you can
would
put
eat the most.
whatever toppings you want on
Yeah.
it, right?
Yes.
And I think chips are more adaptable. I mean, I'd probably reckon a close second would be a baked potato.
So there was a lot of baked potato. There was a lot of you know what? There was every time somebody said a version, mash or people would be like cutting them and putting like cheese in between, whatever it was that they were serving potato, including. There were people who were like, vodka. I'll have mine as vodka.
Oh
Thank
shit!
you.
Does that count?
Well, I guess so. If it's potato served,
Yeah.
away for the rest of your life. But one person rang up and had a description of duck fat fried chips. So like hot chips. That sounded so delicious that me as a vegetarian posed the ethical dilemma, which was if there were a way of removing fat from ducks, like liposuction
Yeah.
style, that didn't harm the duck.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just a cosmetic thing that the ducks were cool with. Somehow they could consent to it.
Yeah.
Like it's like Beverly Hills for ducks.
Well, even if they could, I guess the consent is the thing that the vegans would care the most about. But as a vegetarian, as long as it doesn't hurt them, I don't need them to actively
Well, how about
consent.
this? How about it's a medical procedure? Like there are ducks whose lives are in danger because they're obese.
And the upside is, may as well not, waste not, want not.
Waste
We may
not,
as
want
well,
not. Let's make some soap and some chips.
Then
Fight club it. You know what I mean?
yes. You know what? Well, that'd be great because I could then eat those chips and use the soap to wash away any moral objections I had to what just
And then
happened.
watch two ducks fuck each other up in a basement.
Yeah, they're fighting, right? This is duck fights. These delicious chips are served only at duck fights.
Yeah, the first rule of Duck Fight Club.
Fights. Eat the chips.
Second rule, wash your hands, clear away any moral dilemma. Third rule, enjoy the fights, guys. Tell everyone.
So it was a cocktail. It was a berry gin sort of a play on it, like a gin sour or something. I think was the sort of cocktail. And as I finished that cocktail, the first cocktail I would have had in a very long time. Because even when I've had a drink in the period in between, it would have been like a glass of wine or a beer. And my voice got louder and more excited in the conversation. And I was really like, gee, I do actually say some interesting things.
My sense of self-worth seems to be increasing.
It was like, I was like, oh, I remember why people like
Inflated
this.
sense of confidence.
At
Yeah.
the start, when you can still feel the effects of it, it's amazing. You forget then that you do it all the time, and then
It's diminishing returns.
and you kind of get a bit dulled to the effects of it. But that one cocktail after a long time of not having a cocktail, I was like, oh, this is there was genuinely that moment in my brain that was like, you should have 20 of these.
Well, I just realized how susceptible I am to peer pressure because my initial thought was just to catch up with one friend because we've
Yeah.
been texting during the week. And I was like, oh, I'm going to be in town if he wants to grab a coffee or dinner or whatever. And then when I found out that all my friends are going to be in town, and not only that, but they were catching up at our old haunt, like where we used to hang out when we were in our
Yeah.
20s. And then we got together, and it was a nostalgia tour. It was like, oh, all my old mates, and we're here, and do you remember this time? Then we started like telling old war stories and laughing, and dinner came out, and then a couple, and like because at the moment, I reckon I top out at 2 beers. Like I'll have first glass of beer is always great, tastes great, love it, feels good. Then I have the second one and doesn't feel as great, and then I have a physical reaction where I feel a bit bloated,
Yep.
feel a bit heavy. I've never been a big drinker at the best of times, even when we were young and partying and stuff. Like alcohol was never really my thing. But there was something about like just the energy and, when your mates are saying, I'm getting another one, you want another one? And of course I do. Like, what are you talking about? And then one of our mates, his hotel room had been upgraded to this fucking fancy suite, like a mezzanine, like a 2-level hotel room with like a grand piano and stuff. And so the whole thing, we just got swept along with it. And it was so much fun, but it was also this thing of like the excitement that, like, it's amazing when you think about when you're in your 20s, when you really didn't have any responsibilities. Like, what the fuck were you talking about? Like when you were sharing stories about your life and you'll learn, like, because we were sharing stories, but it was all about like, some of us had families and jobs and these things. And so there was a lot of banter, but it was kind of more substantive banter. And then I think back to my 20s and it's like, what the fuck would when we sat around all night bullshitting at the table, what were we talking about? Because I had no life experience. I had nothing
But we were speculating on what we were going
to do. I guess that's probably what it was, right?
Yeah.
Or pop culture hypotheticals,
Bullshit.
which is
this
podcast.
We were doing this. I mean,
This is
you're
our 20s.
you're the one person who has evidence of what we were doing.
Yeah, that's
you have
right.
14 years of recordings of what we were doing.
That's right. I guess I listened to the first 100 episodes. Actually, on that, I started rewatching the Terminator film series. I don't know what prompted it, but
The rise of AI.
no, I think I got fed like an algorithm, and I just got fascinated with the Terminator franchise because essentially, you have 2 classics, right? You've got like the first one, which is a sci-fi horror classic, then
Yeah.
you've got the second one, which is like a sci-fi action classic, and then diminishing returns for the rest. Like, you could almost lump the next. So you got Terminator 3, then you got Salvation, that's Good For You, the Christian Bale one. Then you got the Jai Courtney one, which everyone hates, and then you got that very last one, which was meant to be the reset where they brought Sarah Connor back and Arnie, and no one liked it. Did you see that one? Did you see any of these?
I think now that you're describing that final one, I don't think I've seen that yet.
Yeah, I saw it, but I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Like, because
I've seen all those other ones, and I couldn't tell you one thing I honestly remember.
That's what I
from
mean.
any of
Like,
them.
I think from the Christian Bale one on, it's all a mess. Like, because it seems to rely on bringing old man Arnie back and then finding increasingly ludicrous justifications for why the Terminator is old and saggy now.
Yeah.
But there's something because I was watching T2 and I'm like, this is such an amazing film, like almost flawless, like perfect. But there's something that kind of was really bugging me between the first film and the second film. And I realized that what it was is that the Terminator, the T-800, and so this is going to get very nerdy for a second. So in the first Terminator, the model of the Terminator is the T-800. That's the first that's the first Terminator. When he comes back as the good guy in T2, it's the T850. So Skynet has slightly iPhone 2 upgraded their original model. But the thing that bugged me is the first film and the second film, the T800 and the T850, their haircut is slightly different. So the one that comes back in 1984 has that sort of floppy 1984 haircut. And then when he comes back in 1991 or 92, whenever it is, he's got like a more 90s haircut, like it's shorter, spikier kind of hair. So clearly Skynet is like, our infiltration machine, this thing that has to blend in with humans, we can't send it to 1992 with the same haircut as 1984 because it's going to stand out too much. Like, would you assume that that's why the T2 has a different haircut?
But was it built only for infiltrating? Wasn't it like didn't it exist in the future, or is it only sent back in that form for the purposes of infiltration?
Yes, it's specifically designed for infiltration. That's why it has organic skin. Like Kyle Reese talks about, it's got bad breath. It perfectly mimics a human being. It's meant to blend in.
But back in the future,
No, when they send it to the past.
yeah. But I'm saying in the future, it's just like a metal robot,
Yes.
and then they
It
just
just
put
says
the
exoskeleton.
exoskeleton,
'Cause it's interior,
okay, yeah.
endoskeleton. Yes.
So yes, you're right. So that's what it is in its original sort of in the factory in the future where they've made the Terminator.
But they do also.
They don't make them with skin
They
on.
do.
Is what I'm asking.
No, they do in the future because they need to raid the rebel bases.
Yeah.
And so they'll send a Terminator with skin on.
So my point being, then surely the Terminators are designed. Do they all look like? So
They do look like Arnie.
Yeah, in the future.
The T800s all look like. So if it's a
So they're
T800
not-
or a T850,
yeah,
they
so
look like
they're not.
Arnie. Robert Patrick.
They're not designed to be sent back into the past. They are designed to infiltrate in the future. So, like more. So they've got to fit in
Well, they're
the
both,
future
right?
times. But the haircut is universal, I'm assuming. Or are you suggesting they all look like Arnie, but in the future they're styled in the future style? And in the
That's what I
past-
think, depending on what time period they're like. If they're using it in
So you think
the future,
before
present.
they keep the hair shaggy or whatever because it's the future and everyone's a bit more like
Yes.
rough and ready, and then before they send
They
Arnie
look-
back into the hairdresser comes in and
Yeah.
gives a
Skynet reviews,
Yeah.
like, that they go to
Video
their data
footage of the
files and they go,
time.
oh, the 90s, everyone had flat tops or whatever
yeah,
it
and
is.
then they get a barber in.
And they get a
Yeah.
robot barber in. But so what that suggests is like, okay, so they've got such intricate data files that they're like, oh, we want to make sure the haircut is perfect so he
Yeah.
blends in more. But the accent, we'll keep the Austrian accent. Because don't you think, like, if you are wanting your infiltration machine to blend in, because the other thing about a Terminator is it can mimic anyone. Like in T2, he calls Edward Furlong's parents and pretends to be Edward Furlong. So it's like, oh, you can mimic anyone. So why don't you just always constantly mimic like Tom Brokaw or someone with a perfect American accent?
Yeah, but I guess that could be a source material thing. Like, so if in this future they only have a limited amount of source material of the period of the time, for whatever reason, things got destroyed, files, blah, 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 then maybe, like in the same way as we assume that everyone in Shakespearean times spoke like,
Elizabethan.
right,
Yeah.
whereas they might have all just spoken like us. But the only thing that we've got remaining are all these like, they were all like, I don't know what this Shakespeare bloke's on about. Bloody nonsense.
Yeah,
he's on
right.
about, you know? We act like everybody spoke that way because that's the evidence that we have.
Right.
Maybe it's an equivalent of that. They have.
The only data source they had was from
Hitler.
Austria.
Well, I mean, there'd be a lot of footage of Hitler, right?
But I'm assuming okay. So that's assuming,
Yeah.
because that's the other question I was going to ask is like, just say that, that's their only source is Hitler or
Yeah.
Germanic languages.
But I'm just saying, who is the most famous Austrian that would be?
I mean, it'd have to
If
be
it-
besides Arnie.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
That's very
If it
confusing.
isn't Meta and it's Arnie
Yeah,
that they
right.
found, right? Maybe there's a world in which, okay, maybe
Franz Ferdinand.
maybe the truth of it is,
Is he
right?
Austrian? He was
This is a alt sort of universe, right? So there was an Arnold Schwarzenegger, right? They have the information of there being the Arnold Schwarzenegger. So the reason that the Terminator looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger and sounds like Arnold Schwarzenegger is that of that period
He
of
was the
time
biggest
that it was
movie
traveling
star.
back to, they had AI data and he was the biggest movie star. So it
They just
naturally
assumed.
just replicated the biggest movie star in the.
But doesn't that go against your perfect
Oh, it's a-
infiltration machine? Because you're like, oh, we can't. If they understand that he was the most famous person in the world,
It's an alt universe thing where they are running simulations of other universes. So in this universe, there is no Arnold Schwarzenegger. So they've taken the information from the other universe of this being a thing that was popular and
In
big,
that timeline.
and then taken into that timeline to use as a.
okay.
They've made their own Arnold. They've put like there isn't one in this universe, so we're going to use this person that already exists and send it back in time.
I mean, that is as convoluted and
Yeah, why not?
complicated.
That's one. That's the Terminator movie now. There you go. That's
That's
a
the third and
canon
fourth film.
timeline now. That one.
Well, the last film,
Yeah.
the justification. So the last film, Dark Fate, it starts with a CGI, like a Sarah Connor and John Connor from T2. They've defeated Skynet and they're hiding out in Mexico. And then Arnie comes in and guns down like Edward Furlong. So completely erases everything that we sunk our hearts and our hopes into
one thing
T2.
we knew was
they're safe.
We did it.
We're
safe.
Yeah.
That whole movie
All for
was
nothing.
worth happening. Oh, no, you're dead now. Sorry.
So then in Dark Fate, like it's that timeline is altered, but then a new Skynet, like it's a
It's always a new Skynet.
There's a new
That's
Skynet
the
comes
lesson
on,
of Terminator.
and they also create Terminators.
What?
Because they follow a almost identical timeline, but their Terminators are slightly different.
Well, yeah.
And so they, and now there's another future savior of humanity, except she's a girl this time.
Oh, yeah.
A Mexican girl. So they've got to come back and save her. And this time they send another hero back who's also a girl because, that's what happens in alternate timelines is they very conveniently gender swap everything just to make it seem slightly different enough that you can make people feel like it's a new product while still following almost exactly the same timeline. But the T-800 that came and killed Edward Furlong at the start of the film then just spends the next 30 years wandering the earth. And in this storyline, he gets a wife and they have a non-physical relationship. Like he's just like a good guy. I think she has a child and he gets a job selling drapes. This sounds like something I'm making up, right? This is actually in the film. They have a conversation with the Terminator where he talks about, I had to find something to do with my time. So I learned how to become human. I got a wife. We have a non-physical relationship and now I sell drapes.
Well, that can't be the plot.
That is what happens in the last Terminator film. And this was one that was...
Unless that was the whole movie, which, you know what? I would endorse if you told me the whole movie.
It was just following Arnie from 1992.
That Terminator stays. Like if the premise of the movie is here's the pitch for the new Terminator.
Oh, and he adopts the name Carl.
Okay, if you come to me
he
on the
doesn't
Hollywood,
just sell the drapes. He starts a drapery business.
How does he know how to get a small business
drapes.
loan?
Yeah, that's right. He
It's a
doesn't
full
know.
business.
He has no background, like
Social security.
social equity.
Illegal immigrant.
Yeah,
Deport him. That's what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying. All right, so I think, I think if you were saying to me, there is a movie, the new Terminator is a movie where, at the end of Terminator 2, you know how that traditionally ends. This is how the new one starts. It's incredible. That Terminator,
They send another Terminator back.
Arrives,
Kills 10-year-old John Connor.
kills him. Whole thing's undone. And then for the rest of the movie, we just follow this Terminator who has no way back, who then has to
Find a
way
way to do.
to integrate and live out.
He's got a half-life of 500 years.
Yeah. And now he's just got to...
You're right. That's actually
a
much
good
more
movie.
Because the thing about the conceit about Dark Fate is like, they averted Skynet happening, but an almost identical artificial intelligence takes over and sends Terminators back anyway. And it's like, okay, so we're just seeing the first Terminator again. But your idea is much more interesting. What does a Terminator do now that it's completed its mission and has to kind of just live on Earth?
I mean, it's literally a...
Because it would be interesting to find out how that, because
he had
very systematic,
mission,
yes.
right? And now the mission is complete.
Yeah,
but
what
he
does
is
it do?
still alive as much as a Terminator can be alive.
Yeah,
and then how does one's circumstance, it's an exploration now about nature versus nurture.
Yes,
how does once it's completed, and it's a rumination on retirement, on the idea of goals and how you find meaning in your life.
Well, it's kind of like when an AFL footballer retires at 30, right? It's like, shit, I dedicated my entire life to this, and now, what do I do?
You should go to Terminator punditry.
It gets into the media.
Yeah, that's right. This is the new Terminators, they're more fancy, but...
I wonder if you could do that right. Because the funny thing about that last one was, so they made Terminator Genesis, which they paid, obviously, James Cameron millions of dollars to come out and say, oh, I love this film. This is going to be the the best Terminator since the last one. And, you know,
I mean, it is cheaper to pay him to say that than it is to make a good movie.
and then it was a horrible disaster and everyone hated it. And so then they go back to James Cameron. They're like, okay, rather than just paying you
Yeah.
to endorse this one, how about you come in with this new director and you have creative control and you help us fashion this new story. And so I read this interview with James Cameron where, this is in retrospect, when Dark Fate bombed. He was like, in retrospect, I think the best thing that they should have done was just to not include Arnie or Linda Hamilton. They should have just, you know, just kicked off a new franchise with new characters and new concept and that kind of stuff. But I'm loyal to Arnie. And so I sort of said to them, well, you got to bring Arnie back. And then when Arnie was back, he was like, well, you've got to bring Linda Hamilton back. And so we just end up giving, it was like your granddad's Terminator. And it should have been like, you know, this is like a new, fresh take on it. But I think if you could go to James Cameron and say, look, we want to just do this existentialist kind of almost a drama, really, about what a Terminator does once it's completed its mission and how it gets from being the, you know, a Terminator in his 30s to being Carl, the drape salesman. How do we get to that?
Yeah. We just want to tell that story.
You get to, because you love action, James. So we're going to tell this like almost like a kitchen sink drama. But can you somehow insert three incredible
Just
set
three
pieces
big set pieces.
that we can space out between the film? And the rest of the film will be like waiting for Godot.
Yeah. Yes. I think we could, though.
I think you'd be interested in that. It's kind of the way when George Miller made Terminator, Mad Max 3. Apparently, he just wanted to do the action scenes. And so they brought in George Ogilvy to do all the drama with the kids and all that kind of stuff. And George just concentrated on doing the action sequences. I think that you could potentially pitch that to James Cameron, right? Bring in a really cool indie director, someone like Darren Aronofsky. He's going to do the kind of more existentialist
Darren
drama.
Aronofsky and
James Cameron
together
present-
at last.
Present Carl.
But it's kind of like when Tarantino and
Rodriguez.
Robert Rodriguez. Ugh.
Rodriguez.
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 I've turned into Scooby Doo. Robert Rodriguez. Oh my God, I can't.
Slow it right down.
Hang on. Robert
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Is that right?
Correct.
Oh boy.
Rodriguez.
Rose. So, Quentin Tarantino
Yeah.
and Robert Rodriguez did From Dusk Till Dawn. Or no, was it the other one? Was the
Grindhouse.
Grindhouse. And so it's two different movies, but, you know, presented together.
Same universe, kind of.
But this is Darren does a bit. James does the action sequence. Now we're back to Darren.
Yeah.
Now we're back to James. Now we're back to Darren. Now we're back to James. A little bit of Darren at the end just to finish it off.
Well, I think in the age of streamers, right,
Yeah.
where box office is less important, films often it's more about content.
Yeah.
People just needing stuff to fill their library. Why not get a bit more experimental with what you're pitching? Like studios surely now must be looking at the terrible box office returns of these tentpole films like, you know, Furiosa didn't do very well. Captain America is looking like it's going to bomb.
I kind of like the idea
Why not
of,
just go let's try something different?
well, you know how like often this is, to bring it back to potato chips, this is the collaborations that brands do with each other to reignite, like, you know, so there'll be like a range of flavors that do a collaboration with like chips or whatever to like, oh, this is our new range of like
Vegemite
crossover.
or whatever.
Yeah, right? Like, because the two products get a bit of a boost out of it. Is there a world in which fading directorial brands like team up with each other to suddenly go, oh, I wouldn't necessarily
M. Night
say...
Shyamalan teams up with
Right. So, like, what is he good at? He's good at the sort of like
Twisty,
the big twisty thing.
high
and then
concept
you need
twisty,
like, but what's he not good at?
everything else.
Yeah. So, but what's the main other thing he's not good at? Like, if you're going to say that's his good thing, what does he need to make those movies great?
I don't know what it would be because what's the flaw?
Is it his dialogue?
But isn't his strength also his weakness? The problem with M. Night Shyamalan is that you feel like, oh, a twist is coming.
Yeah.
So maybe it's kind of like he needs to be paired with someone who's just more like a straight ahead kind of, like a reliable director, like a John McTiernan, you know, Predator, Die Hard.
Yeah.
Like
M. Night Shyamalan and Clint Eastwood. Right? So, right? You put them
That's great.
together.
Yeah.
Right?
A no nonsense
Yeah.
kind of director.
Woody Allen and McG. You know? Like,
Oh, Christ. I don't know about that. I don't know anyone wants to be partnered with Woody Allen on a film, do they?
what about McG? He'd probably be up for it.
Yeah, okay. I guess so.
No, but my point being, yeah, take someone who, like, kind of go, here are two strengths. This person's great at witty dialogue. This person's great at directing action or whatever it might be. And then, like,
Mash
team
them
them up
together.
and say, you do this bit, I'll do this bit.
Well, it also comes back to that thing we've talked in the past about, like, kids' viewing habits now apparently shrinking. Like, 2 hours seems like too long to watch anything for kids these days. So maybe we're making shorter films, and that way, in the same way that Death Proof was like 2 1-hour movies mushed together, you can have those two halves, almost like featurettes, really, and you squish them together. That they can cross over, or they can just be in the same universe. So you're telling.
I like the idea of it genuinely being like think of it more like when a rapper and a musician collaborate, right? So the rapper's doing like the verse, the musician's doing the chorus sort of thing.
Well,
that's what I want it to like sing. I want it to be in like.
But isn't it almost like the original cut of Justice League? So Zack Snyder shot like 80%, then they brought in Joss Whedon to kind of Joss Whedon it up. So and so you can almost tell watching it. So there's the quippy part, that's the Joss Whedon. Then there's the slow mo.
Yeah,
that's
but
Zack
that
Snyder.
was kind of half of it already been done, and this was like this is in collaboration.
I wonder how many directors would agree to that.
I mean, probably none.
Well, apparently,
I reckon we could get Woody Allen and McG.
Apparently, in this Terminator, the last one that they did, so James Cameron was involved in the story or whatever credit. But then apparently his main contribution was just calling up Tim Miller, the actual director, and just yelling at him.
Oh, yeah.
There's just like numerous reports that it was just like, he would just call the production office and just berate them for hours at a time.
How long have we been going for?
Probably got another 10, 15?
10 minutes. 8 minutes left.
So we need to talk
8 minutes left?
We need to talk about the Patreon.
Yes.
And we need to.
Oh, fuck.
I got some biscuits.
I keep forgetting about Crack That Pack. Okay.
So I'm going to get the biscuits.
So it's time for Crack That Pack, or AKA Simp Biscuit. Do we have a jingle, Mike? I can't remember. We had a jingle at one point, didn't we? Something you want to insert in there? Oh, I was going to suggest this to you, but I'm glad you picked it up anyway.
I thought for the end of the year, we should go
idea.
Absolutely 100% traditional.
Back to basics.
That we should go to this is one of the original, like any office in Australia for generations. If you went into the office and they had biscuits, they would be from 2 collections. I decided to go the fancier of the 2 collections. So we've gone with the Arnott's cream favourites. So we have 5 biscuits here today. We have 4 episodes. So we do have a decision to make. Do we do...
Well, we can rule one biscuit out straight away, right?
So what are you going to rule out straight away from this pack?
The orange...
so we have the orange slice, we have the shortbread cream, we have the Kingston, we have the Monte Carlo, and we have the Delta cream.
We're ruling out orange slice.
Ruling out orange.
Do you like orange slice?
I'm just saying that if on a variety of a day, do you think that the orange slice might be just a bit
there's
of
stuff
a
to talk
novelty?
about. Okay.
You know, more of a talking point than, say, the shortbread cream.
And this may change over the next 3 episodes, but my instinctive rating of these biscuits goes Monte Carlo, Kingston.
Oh, this is good actually. Let's do the ratings first, and then the experiment can be whether we think we're right again at the end of the day.
We'll revise it.
So number 1 spot,
Monte Carlo,
Kingston.
Ooh, second spot Kingston.
Monte Carlo.
Third spot shortbread.
Oh, I would have said third spot. Controversial, but I'm going to say orange slice.
Fuck off! Wow,
maybe.
Okay.
That's just my.
All right.
I don't know why.
All right. Then whatever the fake Oreo is.
Yeah, Delta cream.
Delta cream. I had no idea that's what it's called. Why are you trying to sound like an action movie? Delta cream.
Delta cream.
Or a porno.
Then I reckon I would probably go the shortbread and then the Delta cream. And you,
Really?
yeah, and your orange slice.
I just orange slice. In fact,
Okay.
I was in a writer's room about a month ago.
Oh, and you've tested this theory?
And well, there was in the kitchen, the orange creams were always left. Like no one would touch the orange creams. In fact, it ended up just being a jar of orange creams
All
because
right.
would refresh the pack, but no one would eat the orange.
Well, what do
creams.
we want to start with?
What was? Let's go with the Kingston because that was ranked in our top
Okay.
two.
All right. Let's do the Kingston first.
Okay, I'll take my bite.
Okay.
First.
All right. Charlie's going to have a little bite of his Kingston. Oh, there we go. Look at that.
Crack that pack.
That's actually a good time for the music to play while Charlie's chewing. That actually makes a lot of sense. Glad we've finally come up with a method.
You know, I love an oat biscuit.
Oh, it's very crumbly.
Yeah, you know, I love an Anzac.
Yeah.
And so I think the Kingston's a classic. It's so sugary, but it's because it's small, I think it gets away with it.
I don't remember it being this sort of artisanal looking and brittle. I remember it being a little bit more
Chewy.
I don't know. Anyway, I'm gonna go.
Yeah, Will's going to have a bite of his. Yeah, no, I'm always happy with the Kingston. I think the real surprise with the Kingston is just how good that chocolate icing is. It almost feels like there's actual real chocolate in it. I think the thing about the Kingston is you can't have too many of them. But if you sort of are having a cup of tea and you just want that quick sugar hit, then I would the Kingston would almost, I could almost put it number one. But I think that I'm happy with my current ranking at the moment. We'll have to find out what happens next episode about whether I put Monte Carlo in. But I think the Kingston is a very solid, bog standard. Like, in footy, you say he's a good ordinary player. I think the Kingston is a good ordinary biscuit.
It's very sweet.
Very sweet.
It's sweeter than I remember.
If you put chocolate on an Anzac biscuit, that's what you're getting, really.
Does it have an orange?
No, mate. That's the problem is you've cracked that pack, and now the scent of the orange icing is flooding the studio and ruining.
Do you think that's what it is?
Yes, that's disgusting. It's disgusting. I hate the orange slice. It makes me think of like vitamin C tablets. Even the smell. I don't like citrus, generally speaking. I mean, I like oranges and orange juice, but I don't like citrus when they try and put it into like desserts. I don't
like citrus. I like oranges and orange
and lemons
juice.
and limes. No, sorry. Let me rephrase that. I don't like artificial citrus when they try and put it in ice cream, sorbet, chocolate. I hate Jaffas. I hate those orange chocolates that you poke it and the thing's all open.
Yeah.
What's that one called?
That
orange chocolate.
Jaffa slice.
No, it's just called an orange, isn't it?
Orange.
It's
chocolate.
the one. They cut it in slices like an orange.
Tetley's chocolate orange.
Something like that. Yes, chocolate orange. I think
Chocolate
that's what it's
orange.
called.
Yeah. This is really sweet. Couldn't eat a lot of them, but I think for a cream favorites pack, I'm pretty confident still that this will be my number one. It's a very tasty biscuit.
All right, so we do our S tier, then A, B, C, D.
Well, are we ranking against all the other biscuits, or are we ranking within its category?
I think
'Cause it feels like
we do both.
Okay.
I think in its own category, I'm comfortable sitting this at number two.
I'm gonna say in its own category, yeah. This is definitely at this stage still my number one. Happy to keep it at number one.
And on the S tier ranking,
On the S tier ranking, I'm gonna say it's like a B plus.
I'm going to say B, which I think reflects our contextual.
That feels right. That feels pretty good.
Our contextual rankings.
It's actually
as well.
worked out a little bit more.
I mean, probably not as entertaining for people when we agree on stuff. We need to just insert a bit more sort of controversy.
We had that good orange cream debate.
Let's strap yourselves in for the next 3 episodes of TOFOP. We'll mention the Patreon. Yes, thank you to everyone in the last month who helped us push towards 2,000.
And keep signing up, of course. We would love you. If you did not get around to it last month, you can still access a lot of the stuff.
Well, one thing that I have been doing the last 6 weeks, which I've really been enjoying, is a Friday night live stream, which is just a little exclusive podcast with just me and the listeners every Friday night. I've only missed a couple, generally when I'm in Melbourne doing the live shows.
I ran into a guy while we were arranging guests for our live show that we did yesterday. I ran into a guy in Sydney he must have been staying at the same hotel as me,
Mm.
and he was listening to TOFOP, like he showed it on his
Yeah.
phone, like as we were doing it, and
As you guys are doing it.
no, as you and I were like, as
That's
you,
like
were,
you and I were having
Yeah,
sex.
no,
He's like, he showed me dope on my phone as we were doing it. It's like, that's weird. So, I mean, everyone has their kink. I don't want to shame, but
anyway, whatever. Sorry. Anyway, so, someone listens. Hello.
is that it?
Oh, I'm sure I had a point to that, but I can't
Friday
remember what it
live
is.
stream.
Oh, yes, he mentioned that he'd been watching your Friday live stream.
Well, it's not.
And,
well, it's audio only.
I'm sorry, he'd been listening to your Friday live stream, and he said to me, "Have you been listening to Charlie's Friday live stream?" And I was like, "Oh, should I be? What's going on your live stream?"
Well, it's not actually. It started off. I just was kind of like experimenting with this new technology that Patreon had offered, but I've actually really been enjoying it. And what it is good about it is, so it's just an audio only live stream. But people who log into it can then chat with each other. So it's a bit like a Twitch stream, or I don't know what Discourse is, but from what people tell me, it's like Discourse, where people can contribute to the conversation, what I'm talking about live, or can chat with each other. So I do it for like 45 minutes on a Friday. It's a good way to sort of just wrap up the week and talk about stuff. And it's been really, really fun. And so I'm going to keep doing that. So if you need any further incentive to sign up to Patreon, there is a exclusive podcast that's happening every Friday. We're still trying to come up with a name for the show. I haven't at the moment.
Does it stick around?
Yeah, so it's on.
Great.
Yeah, so it uploads.
So
to
it's like a
Patreon
Patreon exclusive.
Patreon exclusive every Friday. So we do it live on a Friday, generally 8:30 on a Friday night, but then you can catch up with it on a Saturday morning if you want.
And so, like, if I wanted to do something like that, I could do that on our Patreon as well.
Absolutely, yeah, for sure. I mean,
I'm not saying I do want to do something like that. I'm just saying, how does it work?
I don't know. This is the thing, because I've thought, this might be a thing that we could do together, but I don't know, because we're not very rarely in the same place. I don't know if you'd have to
but
be...
I wonder for extra content if we could do something separately like this, like where, say for example, you send me a bunch of the mail,
that's a
and
good
I
idea.
could just go through like a bunch of the mail, and then we could all, whatever.
You could definitely do that. What I'm not sure if we can do is if I could dial you in, for instance,
Right.
and we could do it remotely, because the way that, I don't know, the way the interface works, I don't know that I can bring in another mic. I think you'd have to be in the studio with me. But if you wanted to do your own live stream, then that is definitely possible, which I think, could be
Well,
cool.
we're just looking at doing the grander point being that we're looking at trying to create more
Value.
original content and value for the people who've signed up to the Patreon.
Yeah, which I think there already is. There's heaps and heaps of stuff there. So if, especially if you're kind of new to the podcast, like there is so much archival material. If you like this, but you're only new to it, well, guess what?
So I've had an idea. You know what? Fuck it. Let's
Yep.
just talk about it now, and you can tell me whether this is the sort of thing that would, and maybe the listeners can say if this is the sort of thing they're interested in.
I'm hoping you're going to tell me you've been like secretly recording like an album.
I've been secretly recording an album.
Love songs and dedications.
They are it's called Love Songs and Dedications. That's actually the name of the group. I am Love Songs and Dedications.
It's called Accordion Odyssey.
I've changed my name to Love Songs and Dedications. It's
Just a symbol that means love songs and dedications.
My name is now LSND. I had this idea when I was on LSD. So years ago, during the old, just before the Pando,
I'm just going to let that slide.
yeah, okay. I was commissioned to write a book about my philosophy podcast. It was going to be sort of like lessons I'd learnt from philosophy, sort of vibe. And then the world just changed entirely, and it didn't feel very relevant to do a book about, thoughts that everybody had about the world pre, the world changing forever. And I ended up writing a different book and moving on. But like, I've been thinking about, maybe whether I should, think about that project again and what I would do with it and how I would do it. And one of the things I was thinking was like, what if I just did like a weekly sort of thing where I took an episode and I found like just a few like quotes or whatever from the episode, and then almost like a discussion, like just like talked about how what I thought about what they'd said or whatever, and like, but all in the context of like, here's the weird way that I thought about it, and obviously I don't mean it like this, but in the way that if when you would go to church, they would take a couple of passages from the Bible, and then you would just have a discussion about the week or the world,
Sure, and how
but
it
like
relates
through
to,
the like whatever those bits of insight were or what they made you think about, and I was like, just maybe that would be a fun little podcast that also would get people re-engaged with the episodes. You know, like I was trying to think of like what could be a good bit of philosophy content that like might be like, so here's like this from this Todd Sampson episode, here are 3 things. We're going to talk to them about it or the audience about it or whatever. Is that the sort of thing that
Yes.
might work well on that?
I reckon 100%. And the good thing about it too is like you've got people in the chat, so you can choose to either refer to people.
Well, that's what I was kind
live.
of thinking about. Like, was like that would be a good thing where people could go, here's what I thought about that, or this is what I like. Kind of I take it as, or contribute to the conversation around it.
Yeah, I think that like almost like TOFOP with the Friends is kind of our experimental slot where we get to try things. I think that that's exactly what the live stream can be on Patreon, and because it's on Patreon, it's a bonus. So I think people would definitely be bang up for that. So
Okay. Interesting.
people can let us know either way.
Let us know.
All right, well that is TOFOP for this week.
Can I plug a couple of things if you don't mind?
You may.
So there'll be one more episode of Question Everything left in Sydney, but it hasn't been renewed yet. It hasn't not been renewed yet either, but the biggest difference is probably going to be watching it on ABC iView. So if you've got an iView account and you'd like to watch that, that'd be really great. And there is one more episode in Sydney to come to the live studio audience. It is fun and free, and obviously it'd be great to have a big live studio audience for the final episode. Adam and Will has 2 dates left. We have Wollongong and Newcastle. There's still a few tickets available. Those shows have been amazing.
As Kingston did that to you.
It is the Kingston that just got me there a little. We have had great live performances by bands and stuff. There is going to be some more great live performances by bands at these 2 shows.
The Music
as well.
Men. Did you get the Music Men?
Unfortunately we couldn't afford that many musicians
Oh,
live
no.
on stage.
But they come from down your way.
They do come from, and that's what they say.
Yeah.
My tour for next year, 2025, what you're talking about, Will, is now on sale in a whole bunch of places. So they're smaller venues than usual. So if you do want to come along to those shows, I would recommend get in early because I reckon a whole bunch of them will sell out well before I arrive in town.
And of course, the final TOFOP Live, December 21st, at the Basement Comedy Club in Melbourne. I think we're about 3/4 sold out. So probably by the time this goes to air, you've got 2.5 weeks to get your ticket. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it'll be great.
Final show, maybe for a little while at least. I think we've tapped out Melbourne.
Yeah,
We've given you a lot.
It will definitely be our final show in Melbourne for a good while, I imagine.
So get along to that. But that is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson.